In the subway, my own daughter and her husband shoved me onto the tracks, directly into the path of an oncoming train. I lay pinned between the rails, the ground shaking as the train thundered over me at 50 miles per hour. Above, they stood watching, their faces twisted into smiles, anticipating my death. The betrayal from my own family was a physical pain, sharper than any broken bone. But when the last car passed, I calmly pulled myself up, brushed the filth from my coat, and whispered 4 words that would unravel their lives and become their eternal nightmare. The elevator doors chimed and slid open on the 12th floor. I heard their voices before I was even off the lift. My meeting with the insurance group had concluded far more quickly than I'd anticipated. Carmichael had signed off without his usual tedious haggling, which meant I was back at the office a full 90 minutes early on that brisk January Tuesday. Any trace of my good mood evaporated when I recognized my son-in-law's voice wafting from the partially open door of the main conference room. How much longer are we supposed to wait? She's 68. This could easily drag on for another decade. I froze, my leather briefcase suddenly feeling like it was filled with lead. She built this company from scratch, Catherine, my daughter, replied. You know she'll never step aside willingly. Her voice had that sharp, impatient edge I recognized all too well. I pressed myself back into the elevator alcove, out of sight but well within earshot. Then we need to accelerate the timeline, Wesley said. There are legal options. The door swung a bit further, muffling his next words. I caught only fragments. Make sure everything transfers smoothly when. The words hit me like a bucket of icy water. I stood there for 30 seconds, counting each one, forcing my breath to remain steady. Then, I walked toward that conference room, my heels clicking deliberately on the polished marble, announcing my arrival. When I stepped through the door, both Catherine and Wesley snapped their heads toward me, their expressions almost comical in their panic. Wesley's hand moved in a blur, sliding a stack of legal-looking documents into a manila folder. Working late? I kept my voice light, almost casual. I thought you two had already left for the day. Wesley, to his credit, recovered instantly. Just going over the Q4 projections, Mother. We've spotted some concerning trends. Oh. Anything that requires my immediate attention? Nothing urgent, he said smoothly. We can table it for the Thursday meeting. I nodded, my gaze sliding to my daughter. Catherine was staring intently at the table, refusing to meet my eyes. That manila folder sat between them like a smoking gun. Whatever I had just interrupted, they knew I'd heard something, and the 3 of us immediately began the charade of pretending otherwise. 2 hours later, I sat opposite Wesley in the executive dining room on the 15th floor. The cold January sun cut harsh angles through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Catherine was with us, listlessly pushing a piece of lettuce around her plate while Wesley launched into what he clearly believed was a subtle, carefully crafted pitch. The industry is changing at lightning speed, Eleonora. Younger leadership brings a fresh perspective. I cut my filet mignon with methodical precision, my hand perfectly steady. I have adapted this company to every single change for 35 years, Wesley. What, precisely, makes this different? No offense, but traditional methods aren't as effective anymore. He paused, visibly searching for a diplomatic word. Old? I supplied for him, my voice flat. Established, he countered. Set in your ways. The company needs room to evolve. I placed my knife and fork down deliberately. The small clink of silver against porcelain was the only sound in the room. My will is perfectly clear. After I am gone, everything passes to Catherine, to be managed by you. Until that day, I run this company. Wesley leaned forward, his elbows on the table, invading my space. His voice dropped, losing its polite veneer and taking on a harder edge. That's not good enough. We need control now. Is that a need, Wesley? Or a want? His jaw clenched. The polished mask he wore cracked, just slightly. You're making a mistake. Holding on this tight is how things get broken. I held his gaze, unblinking. Are you threatening me, Wesley? Before he could reply, Catherine suddenly spoke, her voice sharp. Mom, you're just being unreasonable. We're your family. Why can't you trust us? Something cold twisted in my gut, but I kept my voice level. Trust is earned through actions, Catherine, not demanded through a blood relation. You've never believed in me, she flared, her fingers twisting her wedding ring. You never thought I was capable of anything. I gave you a senior position in this company, I said quietly. You apparently chose to use it against me. She stood so abruptly her chair screeched against the floor. Wesley rose with her, a calculated display of power as he towered over me at the table. Wesley is right, Catherine said, her voice tight with resentment. You're going to regret pushing us away. They collected their things. Wesley slapped his folder against the table with unnecessary force before they both turned and walked out. Catherine paused at the doorway, glancing back just once. Whatever flicker of guilt I might have seen was extinguished the moment Wesley called her name from the hallway. I sat alone at the table. My coffee had gone cold. Below me, the city sprawled out, indifferent to the petty betrayals playing out on the 15th floor. I'd spent 35 years building something real, something of substance. And they wanted me to hand it over like a set of car keys. Back in my own office, I locked the door. It was something I almost never did, and the solid click of the deadbolt felt significant, final. I knelt and used a small key I kept on my person to open the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside were the core corporate financials, vendor contracts, and expense reports. I spread the latest reports across the mahogany. My finger traced a line of transactions, all approved with Wesley's signature. The vendor was MedSupply Solutions, with recurring monthly payments ranging from $3,000 to $8,000. I pulled our master vendor files. I went through every medical equipment supplier we had used for the last decade. MedSupply Solutions was not among them. The amounts didn't correspond to any contract I had ever authorized. They were small enough to fly under a routine review, but large enough to add up significantly over time. I leaned back in my chair, the leather groaning. That conversation I'd overheard. Accelerate the timeline, legal options. This wasn't just impatient griping. This was a conspiracy. What, exactly, had they been planning before I walked in? I thought I knew my own daughter. I thought I had trained Wesley, brought him into the business, given him every advantage. I had been a fool. My hand rested on a thick binder embossed with the company logo, Vance Medical Solutions. My creation. Built from nothing. The winter light was failing, casting long, dark shadows across my office. I looked at the framed photos on my wall, me cutting ribbons, accepting community awards, speaking at conferences. I remembered Wesley gesturing dismissively at those same photos just last month. I'd thought it was carelessness. Now I understood it was contempt. I took my phone from my purse and meticulously photographed every single expense report, making sure Wesley's signature was clear on each. Then I returned everything to the drawer, locked it, and put the key away. Through the window, the lights of Manhattan were flickering to life. Somewhere in this building, Wesley and Catherine were likely toasting their own cleverness, convinced I was just a sentimental old woman, too weak to see what they were doing right under my nose. You want the company? I said aloud to the empty, darkening room. My voice was steady and cold. Fine. Let's see if you can handle what comes with it. I opened my laptop and created a new, innocuously named folder, Q1 Audit Prep. Inside, I began to document everything. Every conversation. Every discrepancy. Every lie. If they wanted to play this game, they were about to discover I'd been playing it since before they were born. 3 agonizing weeks crawled by. February descended on Manhattan, burying the curbs in dirty snow and bringing a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. I'd started arriving at the office by 7, sometimes earlier. The townhouse on the Upper East Side, where Wesley and Catherine also lived, an arrangement that had once seemed so practical, now felt like enemy territory. I maintained my distance, letting them believe I was in retreat. I let them think I was just a stubborn old woman, clinging to past glories, too blind to see the new reality. All the while, I documented. On a bleak Tuesday morning, I pushed through the revolving doors of the Vance Medical Headquarters at 6:45 a.m. The lobby was deserted save for the security guard. I rode the elevator to the 12th floor, expecting the tomb-like silence of an office not yet awake. Instead, the lights in the main conference room were blazing. Through the glass walls, I saw Wesley, standing at the head of the table, addressing 3 of our clinic directors. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight into the room. The conversation stopped instantly. Wesley's expression was a rapid series of flickers, surprise, then sharp annoyance, then the smooth, professional mask he wore so well. An early morning meeting? I kept my tone neutral, almost pleasant. An initiative I'm leading, Wesley said, not moving from my place at the head of the table. I didn't want to bother you with the minutiae. The 3 directors looked intensely uncomfortable. Marcus Washington, who had been with me from the very beginning, suddenly found his notepad fascinating. Any meeting involving my clinic directors, I said, letting each word land with precision, requires my approval. We're just discussing operational improvements, Eleonora. Nothing that impacts overarching strategy. I turned my attention to the directors. I will expect a full report of this meeting's notes on my desk within the hour. They all nodded, pointedly avoiding Wesley's glare. I left without another word. I had made my point. Whatever lies Wesley had been spinning about upcoming organizational changes or new reporting structures, they now understood one thing clearly: I wasn't going anywhere. That evening, I returned to the townhouse later than usual. Catherine's coat was on the rack, but when I called her name, the house was silent. I found a note on the kitchen island in her familiar looping script: working late, don't wait up. She was lying. I had seen her silhouette pass by the upstairs hallway window as I paid the driver. I climbed the stairs to my private study, the room I'd used for decades, lined with medical journals and photographs from happier times. The door was ajar. Wesley was sitting at my desk, my personal papers spread across the surface, using my sanctuary without permission. That is my desk, Wesley. He didn't look up right away, a petty power play to make me wait. When he finally raised his eyes, there was no apology in them. I just needed a quiet space to work. I thought you'd be at the office longer. This is my home. This is my private office. Technically, it's the family home, he gestured vaguely. We all live here. I felt my jaw tighten. My name on the deed says otherwise. He gathered his papers, deliberately, agonizingly slowly. As he passed me in the doorway, he paused. You should really think about what we discussed, Eleonora. This doesn't have to be difficult. I didn't dignify that with a response. After he'd gone, I looked at my desk. He had rearranged things, small, insignificant items, but the changes were obvious. It was a territorial marking, like an animal staking its claim. After that night, I made sure to arrive at the office before him every morning. I began locking sensitive files in my personal safe, documents he'd previously had access to. I changed key passwords on the company's systems. They were small, defensive moves, but they were building a fortress. In mid-February, I was staying late to review the monthly financials. The office was silent. I pulled up the expense tracking system, sorting by approver. There it was again, MedSupply Solutions. Another payment, this one for $7,800. I cross-referenced our procurement contracts. Nothing. No authorized agreement. No competitive bid. No signed terms. But Wesley's digital signature was on every single approval. I photographed each screen with my phone. Then I pulled the vendor registration documents. MedSupply Solutions had been added to our approved list 8 months ago. The authorization, Wesley Chambers, Chief Operating Officer. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Small, recurring charges designed to bypass a standard audit. Over 8 months, they now totaled nearly $50,000. Paid to a company that, as far as I could tell, didn't exist and provided no services. Whatever Wesley was planning, he needed capital. And he was stealing it directly from the company he was so desperate to inherit. 2 days later, I received a call from Gerald Thompson. We'd been partners for 15 years, I trusted him implicitly. "Eleonora, good to hear your voice. I just wanted to follow up on our conversation from last week." I frowned. "We didn't speak last week, Gerald." There was a pause. "Oh. Well, Wesley mentioned. He said you'd be stepping back soon. Just wanted to make sure I understood the transition plan." My hand tightened on the receiver. "There are no transitions planned, Gerald." Wesley spoke without my authority. "That's awkward," Gerald said. He seemed quite certain about the timeline. "I will address this internally. Our partnership remains unchanged." After I hung up, I sat staring at my office wall. Wesley wasn't just undermining me in whispers anymore. He was actively telling our partners I was leaving, manufacturing a narrative to force reality to match it. I found him in his office an hour later. He was on his cell phone, laughing. When he saw me in the doorway, his expression shifted to one of professional neutrality. "I'll call you back," he said, ending the call. "Something wrong?" "You told Gerald Thompson I'm retiring." "I am not." He had the audacity to shrug. "I said transitions happen." He asked about succession planning. I gave him an honest answer. "Honestly? You implied my retirement was imminent. You can't run this company forever, Eleonora. Our stakeholders need assurance that there's a plan." "The plan," I said, my voice like ice, "is that my daughter inherits when I die. Not a moment before. Stop creating confusion. Maybe you should consider making it sooner rather than later." His voice had that sharp edge again, the veneer cracking. "For everyone's sake." I left before I said something I couldn't take back. The office felt different now. The tension was palpable. Conversation stopped when I entered a room. The atmosphere had been poisoned by whatever story Wesley was spreading. Late February brought the final confrontation at the house. I'd been working until 9 most nights, deliberately avoiding the townhouse. When I finally returned that Thursday, Wesley was waiting for me in the living room. He wasn't reading or watching television. He was just sitting in the armchair by the window, waiting. "We need to talk about your role in this company." I hung my coat slowly, buying time, mastering my response. "I'm not interested in having this conversation again, Wesley." He stood, physically blocking my path to the stairs. "You're becoming a burden. Operations are suffering because you refuse to delegate." "Delegate, or surrender? Which is it? Call it what you want. Maybe it's time for you to rest. Enjoy retirement. Travel. Whatever it is people do when they stop working." I met his gaze directly. "That sounds less like advice and more like a push. Take it however you want." His voice dropped, becoming an open threat. "Things are going to change, Eleonora. One way or another." Catherine appeared in the hallway, drawn by our raised voices. She didn't move between us. She moved to stand beside Wesley. Her silence was her answer. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. I saw how she had positioned herself, physically and metaphorically. I saw how her eyes darted away from mine. I saw how her hand rested on Wesley's arm in a clear gesture of alliance. "I'm sleeping at the office tonight," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I picked up my keys from the hall table and walked out the front door, leaving them standing together in the living room of my house. The office sofa was horribly uncomfortable, but I had slept in worse places. I lay there in the darkness, the city lights filtering through the blinds, and I thought about the accelerated timeline. This wasn't just about business anymore. Wesley wasn't just ambitious, he was actively planning something, and those financial irregularities were funding it. And my daughter, the child I had raised and loved, was watching her husband threaten me and doing nothing. I had built this company for my family. Now, my family was trying to steal it. My phone buzzed on the desk. Wesley's name flashed on the screen. I almost declined the call, but a dark curiosity won out. "We have an urgent meeting tomorrow with potential investors," he said, without any preamble. "Need you there. 9 a.m. "Which investors?" "I'll brief you tomorrow morning." "Oh, and your car's in the shop, isn't it? That engine trouble you mentioned last week?" I hadn't mentioned any car trouble. My driver had just had it serviced. "It's fine," Wesley continued, not waiting for an answer. "It'll probably be faster to take the subway anyway. Morning traffic is a nightmare. The Green Line to 42nd will put you right there." Something in his voice, too casual, too helpful, too specific about the route, made my blood run cold. "I'll be there," I said slowly. "Great. See you tomorrow." He hung up. I stared at my phone in the dark. Why would he assume my car was broken? Why suggest the subway so precisely? Whatever they were planning, I needed to be 3 steps ahead. But lying there on that lumpy sofa, I couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow morning, a line was about to be crossed. A point of no return. I had been living in the small, converted office space for a week. It was just after 8:45 on a Wednesday morning in early March, and I was surrounded by financial reports. Wesley's name flashed on my phone. "We have a serious problem," his voice was tight with manufactured urgency. "United Healthcare is pulling out." I set my coffee mug down. "What?" "We just renewed their contract in January. Their risk assessment team found issues. Compliance concerns. They're at the main office right now, and they're demanding to speak with you personally." "What kind of issues?" "I don't have the details, Eleonora. They just want the owner. They said nobody else will do." He paused. "Are you coming or not?" Every instinct I had screamed that this was a lie. But the scenario was just plausible enough. United Healthcare was 30% of our revenue. If they were genuinely threatening to terminate. "I'll drive. I can be there in 20 minutes. "You haven't checked the traffic," he said quickly. "The FDR is a parking lot. Overturned semi near 96th. I pulled up the traffic app on my laptop. He was right. A solid red line snaked down the highway. "How did you know that?" "I just tried to leave for a meeting myself. Had to turn back. It's a disaster. You'll never make it by car in time." His logic was frustratingly sound. "We don't have 40 minutes. Take the subway. The Lexington line goes straight to the office." I hated being maneuvered, but if this crisis was real, time was critical. "Where should we meet?" "Lexington and 63rd Street Station." "I'll meet you on the platform in 10 minutes. I grabbed my coat and left, locking the door twice. The walk to the station took 5 minutes. Wesley was already there at the top of the stairs, hands shoved in his pockets, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Beautiful morning for March," he said as I approached. I ignored the small talk. We descended into the station, swiped our cards, and moved toward the downtown platform. It was mid-morning, so the crowds were thin, maybe 8 other passengers scattered along its length. Wesley kept up a steady stream of chatter about investor concerns and contract terms, but I wasn't listening. I was watching him. He was blinking too rapidly. His hand kept moving to his jacket pocket and back out again. The smile on his face looked like it had been rehearsed. He guided me with a light, insistent touch on my elbow, positioning us near the middle of the platform, close to the yellow warning strip. The digital sign updated, "Next train, 2 minutes." "Is Sandra confirming these investors are legitimate?" I asked, testing him. "Of course. She's with them right now. They brought all their documentation." "What are their names?" "I want to know who I'm meeting." He paused, just for a fraction of a second. "Henderson and, I think, Martinez. Sandra has the details." "You didn't get their names." It happened fast, he said, a little too quickly. She's handling the protocol. A distant rumble echoed from the tunnel. I glanced down the dark track and saw the first glow of the train's headlights. Wesley suddenly went quiet. He checked his phone, and when he looked up, his expression had changed. The false animation was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. The platform began to vibrate. A rush of wind pushed out of the tunnel ahead of the train, stirring scraps of paper across the concrete. The other passengers instinctively took a step back from the edge. Wesley took a step closer, positioning himself slightly behind me and to my right. Where exactly in the building are they waiting? I asked, turning slightly toward him. Conference room B. The large one. We don't have a conference room B. He caught himself. Sorry, I mean the large conference room. The main one. You know which one. The train's headlight brightened, the roar growing deafening. I turned to face him fully, and what I saw in his eyes made my breath catch in my throat. There was no concern. No anxiety. Just cold, flat calculation, as if he were solving a final equation. Wesley, I said, what's really happening here? He didn't answer. His hands came out of his pockets. The train was close now. 15 feet. 10. Time seemed to stretch, compressing and expanding all at once. I saw everything with a horrifying, supernatural clarity, Wesley's weight shifting to his front foot, his arms beginning to extend, the absolute determination in his eyes. Then, his palm struck my back, precisely between my shoulder blades. It wasn't a nudge. It was a violent, full-bodied shove. I pitched forward. The platform edge vanished. There was a sickening moment of weightlessness, 4 feet of empty air, and then the track bed rushed up to meet me. My knees hit first, sending white-hot lightning up my legs, but the pain was distant. My hands slammed into the filthy gravel. The train's horn was a physical blow, a deafening shriek. Its headlight filled my vision, blinding me. Through the glare, I saw the engineer's face in the cabin, a mask of frozen horror. No time to climb out. No time to roll. To my left, the third rail glinted, instant death. Death to my left, death bearing down on me. Survival was only in the 18-inch gap between the two running rails. Center. Stay center. Pure instinct took over. I dropped completely flat, pressing my body into the gravel and grime, pinning my arms tight to my sides. I turned my face sideways, sucking in one last, desperate breath and holding it. The front of the train passed over me. Then, complete, absolute darkness. The roar erased thought, erased identity, erased everything except a primal mantra: don't move. Don't move. Don't exist. The train's undercarriage was inches from my back. I could feel its heat, smell the acrid stench of burning oil and hot metal. Dust and debris pelted my face. Thud thud. Thud thud. Each set of wheels passing was a concussive beat. Something wet, oil or brake fluid, dripped onto my neck. The vibration was so intense it rattled my teeth, shook my organs, felt as if it were loosening my bones from their sockets. My lungs burned for air. I kept my mouth clamped shut, clutching the gravel, not for stability, but as an anchor to reality. I am still here. The train was braking. I felt it through the rails pressed against my body. Metal screamed against metal, a sound so loud it was a physical weight. The smell of burning brake pads choked the air. The rhythm slowed. The roar decreased. And then, it stopped. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the deafening ring in my ears. My entire body was shaking uncontrollably. I lay there for a second, maybe 10. I was alive. I shifted, testing. My limbs obeyed. I opened my eyes and saw light between two of the cars ahead. I crawled forward on my belly, my legs feeling disconnected, and reached the emergency ladder. A transit worker above me reached down a hand. I waved him off and pulled myself up, emerging onto the platform like a creature from the depths. I was covered head to toe in black grime. My clothes were torn, stained with oil. Blood was seeping through the ruined fabric at my knees. 20 feet away, Wesley stood frozen. His face was not a mask of relief. It was a mask of cold, stunned calculation. And then, as if on cue, Catherine burst through the crowd, breathless, her timing too perfect to be anything but planned. "Mom! Oh my God! What, Wesley, what happened?" Her face was a performance of shock, but her eyes betrayed her. They weren't relieved. They were furious. Other passengers were swarming, their voices a chaotic chorus. "Are you okay, ma'am? Someone call an ambulance." "I saw him." He stumbled. "No, I saw someone push her." I ignored them all. I walked, my legs shaking but steady, directly toward my daughter and her husband. The crowd parted for me. I stopped 2 feet from them, close enough to see their pupils dilate, close enough to watch their masks of horror slip and reveal the ugly disappointment beneath. They had tried to murder me. And they had failed. A transit officer hurried over. "Ma'am, what happened? Did you fall?" I kept my eyes locked on Wesley. "I was pushed." "Pushed?" the officer repeated. "By who?" Wesley stepped forward, his voice suddenly dripping with false concern. "She stumbled. I tried to grab her, I couldn't reach her in time." "Officer, she's confused, she's in shock." "He pushed me," I said, my voice quiet but carrying over the noise. "Deliberately. That's insane." Wesley sputtered. "Why would I?" I studied them both. Catherine couldn't hold my gaze. Wesley held it for too long, a classic overcompensation. Around us, more officers were arriving. I spoke quietly, for their ears only, but with the weight of absolute certainty. "I'll see you in court." Then I turned my back on them and walked toward the station exit. Behind me, I heard Wesley calling, his voice frantic, "Eleonora, wait. This is a misunderstanding. Wait." I didn't turn. I just kept walking, one foot in front of the other, climbing the stairs toward the daylight and the rest of my life that I lay frozen on the gravel, possessed by a primal fear that if I moved a muscle, the train would lurch back into motion and finish what it had started. I had to test. I curled my fingers. I flexed my toes. I carefully bent my knees. Everything still worked. I was whole. I was alive. My son-in-law had just tried to murder me. My eyes found a sliver of light between the cars, perhaps 15 feet ahead. I began to crawl, pulling myself forward with my elbows, my legs feeling like water. The distance felt infinite. Finally, my hand gripped the cold, lowest rung of the emergency ladder. "Don't move. Stay there, ma'am. We're coming," a transit worker's voice shouted from above. "I'm coming to you," my voice came out as a raw scrape. I pulled myself up, my arms doing most of the work, my legs trembling so badly they could barely hold my weight. I climbed rung by rung, back to the world of the living. The transit worker reached down to help, but I waved him off and hauled myself over the edge alone. The platform was chaos. Passengers were clustered in small, agitated groups, their voices overlapping. "Did you see that? Someone pushed her." "No, she just fell." I stood there, brushing ineffectually at my clothes, my hands just smearing the black grime. My suit was destroyed, torn at the knees and elbows, soaked in oil. My face felt caked in dust. Then I saw him. Wesley stood 20 feet away, his face a mask of false concern that didn't reach his eyes. Our gazes locked. For one brief, unguarded second, I saw through him completely. It wasn't worry. It wasn't relief. It was calculation. He was already building his story. "Mom. Catherine." She burst through the crowd, her coat flying open, her arrival impossibly, perfectly timed. She grabbed my arm. I instinctively yanked it away. Oh my God, what happened? Wesley, what happened? The performance was skilled, her voice pitched perfectly between shock and concern. But her eyes betrayed her. Before she remembered to school her expression, I saw it, a flash of pure, unadulterated frustration. The realization crystallized, sharp and cold. They had wanted me dead. This wasn't a sudden, impulsive act. This was planned. The fabricated, urgent meeting, the convenient traffic report, the precise position on the platform, and now, Catherine's timed arrival to play the grieving daughter to a crowd of witnesses. A transit officer pushed through. "Ma'am, are you injured? What happened?" I kept my eyes locked on Wesley. I was pushed. Pushed, the officer repeated. By who? Wesley moved quickly, his voice taking on a tone of wounded innocence. She stumbled. I tried to grab her, but I couldn't reach. The train was so fast. "Officer, she's confused." The trauma. Catherine joined the chorus. "Mom, please, you need medical attention. You're in shock." I just looked at her. "You're here," I said flatly. "How convenient." I was coming to meet you both," she stammered. "I just got here." I saw. Perfect timing. More officers arrived. Passengers offered a dozen contradictory accounts. I saw someone behind her. No, she was alone. I think she just lost her balance. And, of course, the platform cameras had apparently experienced a technical failure during the precise window of the incident. I stood perfectly still, studying the two people I had loved most in the world. My daughter, who had chosen money over her own mother. My son-in-law, who had just tried to kill me in broad daylight. They stood together, a united front, against me. The transformation that had begun in January was now complete. The woman I had been, the mother, the boss, the victim, died on that platform. What climbed out was something else entirely. A strategist. I walked slowly toward them. The crowd parted. I stopped 2 feet away, close enough to see the tension in Wesley's jaw, to see Catherine twisting her wedding ring. They waited. I looked at Wesley. Then at Catherine. Then back to Wesley. I let the silence stretch until it was uncomfortable. Then I spoke, my voice low but clear enough for them to hear. "I'll see you in court." I turned and walked toward the station exit. "Eleonora, wait." Wesley called after me, his voice laced with panic. "This is a misunderstanding. We need to talk." I didn't turn. I didn't acknowledge him. I just walked with steady purpose toward the stairs. Behind me, I heard the officers asking them to stay for questions. I knew a criminal case was impossible. But a criminal case wasn't what I was thinking about. I emerged into the cold March sunlight. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage that was being carefully contained. I pulled out my phone and found the name I needed, Gerald Morrison, attorney. Gerald Morrison. "Gerald, it's Eleonora Vance. I need to see you immediately." I took a breath. My son-in-law just tried to kill me, and I am going to destroy him. There was a half-second of silence. "Come to my office. I'll clear my afternoon." The emergency clinic took 40 minutes. A nurse cleaned the scrapes on my knees and temple. The doctor asked how I'd gotten track debris in my hair. I was under a train, I told him. He looked at me like I was a ghost. "You're lucky to be alive," he said. "I know," I replied. By early afternoon, I sat across from Gerald Morrison. My ruined suit was gone, replaced with clean clothes I kept at the office. "I'll be direct, Eleonora," Gerald said, sliding the initial police report across his desk. "The criminal case is very weak. The cameras failed. 6 witnesses, 6 different stories. 3 say you stumbled. So he just walks away? After trying to murder me? Criminally? Probably. Gerald leaned back. But there are other ways to seek justice. You mentioned suspicions? Financial irregularities? Understanding clicked into place. Go after him for fraud. Fraud. Embezzlement. Breach of fiduciary duty. A paper trail is much harder to discredit than a witness. Gerald leaned forward, his expression serious. But to get it, you need him comfortable. He can't be suspicious. You have to play the part. The forgiving mother. The thought of it made my stomach turn. Can you do it? Can you live under the same roof as them? I thought about lying between those rails. I thought about the disappointment on my daughter's face. Yes, I said. I can do it. That evening, I returned to the townhouse. My hands shook as I turned the key, but my face was a mask of calm. Wesley and Catherine were in the living room. They looked startled when I walked in. I've had time to think, I said, sitting in my usual armchair, reclaiming my territory. Catherine leaned forward. And? Life is too short for this kind of family conflict. I forced the words out. Maybe I did stumble. The stress lately. My attorney advised against pressing charges. It would be an uncertain outcome and would just tear the family apart. Catherine burst into tears and rushed to hug me. I endured it, my body rigid, before stepping back. Wesley watched me, his eyes narrowed, calculating, trying to determine if this was genuine. For the next 2 weeks, I worked from my home office late into the night. At 2 a.m, the house was silent as I dug through 5 years of financial records. And there it was. MedSupply Solutions. Recurring payments, $3,000 to $8,000. I looked up the business registration, formed in Delaware, address listed as a UPS store in Newark. I traced the wire transfers. The destination account was in the Cayman Islands. The account holder name included Wesley's mother's maiden name. An amateur's mistake. A floorboard creaked. I minimized the windows just as Wesley appeared in the doorway. Working late? Couldn't sleep. I gestured at the harmless quarterly reports I'd pulled up. Nearly dying changes your perspective. Makes you want to get things organized. He stepped into the room, his eyes scanning my desk. You're looking for something. Should I be? He left, muttering, everything in this company concerns me. I waited until his footsteps faded, then opened the files again. I spent the rest of the night documenting everything, taking photos, and copying the data to an external hard drive I labeled estate planning docs. By morning, I had proof of 42 months of fraudulent payments, totaling $340,000. The next day, I hired Brennan and Associates, forensic accountants. I'm preparing for a possible acquisition, I told Jennifer Brennan, sliding the USB drive across the table. I need a comprehensive review. Pay particular attention to vendor payments. At breakfast the following morning, I made the announcement. I've hired Brennan and Associates for a routine audit. Why? Wesley's voice was carefully casual, but I saw his hand shake as he reached for his coffee. It's because I almost died and realized I'd been sloppy with compliance, I said. They'll be auditing everything. 5 years of transactions, vendor relationships, expense approvals. I met his eyes. I'll need you to provide full access. 3 weeks later, my phone rang. It was Jennifer Brennan. Mrs. Vance? We need to meet. Today. I found something. I looked at my reflection in the car's rearview mirror. For the first time since the subway, I smiled. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Phase 1 was complete. The conference room on the 12th floor felt different. This was where I'd first overheard them scheming. Now, I sat at the head of the table, about to end it. Wesley and Catherine sat across from me, still believing this was a routine review. I distributed the bound documents. The cover read, Confidential Restructuring Proposal. I've made some decisions about the company's future, I began, my voice formal. Effective immediately, I am forming a new entity, Vance Medical Solutions, LLC. Our 4 most profitable clinics, Upper East Side, Midtown, Financial District, and Brooklyn Heights, will be transferred to this new company. Wesley's face darkened as he processed the implications. These locations, along with their corresponding major insurance contracts, represent approximately 65% of total revenue. Sandra Chin will serve as Chief Operating Officer of the new entity. I paused. Wesley and Catherine, your positions will remain with the original company, Vance Healthcare Group. Wesley stood so fast his chair tipped backward, clattering to the floor. You can't do this. This is sabotage. It's illegal asset stripping. It's completely legal, Robert Park, my lawyer, said calmly, sliding a document across the table. Legal opinion attached. Mrs. Vance owns 100% of the equity. She has the absolute right to restructure. I'll sue. That company was promised to us. Your inheritance is governed by my will, Wesley. After my death. I kept my voice flat. I am very much alive, and I can restructure as I wish. Catherine started crying, reaching for my hand. Mom, please. Don't do this. We're family. I pulled my hand back. Family tried to kill me. Remember? That was an accident, she shrieked. You said you forgave us. I said we would move forward, I corrected her. This is moving forward. Separately. Wesley pounded his fist on the table. There's nothing left. Those clinics barely break even. Then you'll need to manage them efficiently, I said, checking my watch. Figure it out. I returned to the townhouse that evening for the last time. I moved methodically, packing only my personal belongings. Wesley found me in the master bedroom as I handed him an envelope. He ripped it open. An eviction notice? You're kicking us out? Your own daughter? My house. My decision. 30 days. I folded a shirt. Where are we supposed to go? What salary? Without those contracts, there's no revenue. Catherine appeared in the doorway. I can't believe you're doing this. I didn't look up. I can't believe you stood on that platform and smiled while I almost died. She had no response. I left them standing in the living room of my house and moved into a sparse, 1-bedroom apartment in Murray Hill. It was empty, but it felt clean. 10 days passed. The new company operated smoothly. The old one, as intended, was collapsing. Then, I was served with legal documents. Wesley and Catherine were suing, challenging the restructuring, claiming breach of fiduciary duty and elder abuse. 15 pages alleging I was mentally incompetent and acting maliciously. I read the entire complaint standing in my new office. When I finished, I looked at my assistant, Sandra. They're fighting back. I allowed myself a slight smile. Get Morrison on the phone. It's time to counterattack. It's time to show them what we found in the audit. They're claiming you made oral promises to transfer the business, Morrison said, his conference table covered in their lawsuit. And they're requesting a court-ordered psychological evaluation, citing erratic behavior post-trauma. My restructuring. Exactly. It's a desperate tactic. They're counting on financial pressure to force a negotiation. Bleed you dry in legal fees. I'm not settling, I said. The following week, we were in court. I sat at one table, Wesley and Catherine 20 feet away at another. Wesley's attorney argued I was destroying the company's value. Morrison argued that my ownership rights were absolute. The judge reviewed the documents. Motion for injunction denied. It was a small victory. But victories cost money. That one hearing cost me $12,000. The court did, however, grant one of their requests, a comprehensive psychological evaluation. 3 appointments were scheduled. At the first, I sat at a computer, clicking through pattern recognition puzzles and reciting number sequences backward. The tests were almost insultingly simple. Excellent cognitive function, the doctor noted. No signs of impairment. The psychiatric evaluation was equally pointless. The doctor asked me about the subway incident, about my business decisions. How did nearly dying affect your mental state? He asked. It clarified my priorities, I replied calmly. It showed me exactly who I could trust. Some might interpret your recent business decisions as retaliatory, he pushed. And some, I countered, might interpret attempted murder as a sound motive to protect one's assets from criminals. He made his notes. The neurological exam, brain scans, reflex tests, all came back normal. The court-appointed evaluator's final report was unequivocal: no evidence of psychological impairment or diminished decision-making capacity. Meanwhile, Wesley was running what remained of the old company straight into the ground. Desperate to cut costs, he fired 40% of the staff. Patient care quality plummeted. He even tried to poach employees from my new, thriving company, Vance Medical Solutions. My new COO, Sandra Chen, received his call and, as she later told me, told him exactly where he could go. June became a marathon of court appearances and discovery motions. Wesley's attorneys demanded thousands of internal documents, trying to prove I had malicious intent. By the end of the month, I had spent $87,000 defending myself against their meritless claims. One late evening, Sandra found me in my office, staring at the mounting legal bills. "Eleonora, you look exhausted," she said, her voice filled with genuine concern. "Is this legal battle worth your health?" I looked up. "They tried to kill me, Sandra." "Yes. It's worth everything." "What if they win?" she whispered. I pulled open my desk drawer and tapped a thick folder. "They won't. I have something they don't know about yet. The audit. Just a little longer. Then I end this." My phone buzzed. It was my lawyer, Morrison. "3 new motions filed today," he sighed. "We need to discuss strategy." I motioned for Sandra to stay and told Morrison to schedule the hearing. "And make sure Jennifer Brennan, the forensic accountant, can attend. It's time to deploy Phase 2. I hung up. Inside that folder on my desk was the preliminary audit summary: $340,000 in documented theft, shell companies, and offshore transfers. Every fraudulent transaction bore Wesley's signature. Let them file their motions. The counterpunch was coming. In early July, I sat in Morrison's office. His assistant brought in a thick, courier-delivered package. The final forensic audit report. The cover read, "Confidential Forensic Audit, Evidence of Systematic Fraud." Jennifer Brennan's work was meticulous. It was 347 pages of evidence, bank statements, wire transfers, and shell company formation documents showing Wesley as the beneficial owner. It included emails from Wesley to himself, pretending to be the fictitious vendor, to create a false paper trail. The total documented theft, $346,800. "How fast can we get this filed?" I asked Morrison. He leaned forward, energized. "The court? 24 hours. The SEC and the IRS? I can have it on their desks by tomorrow afternoon." "Do it," I said. "All of them. Simultaneously." 48 hours later, everything changed. Morrison filed the audit as an exhibit in our civil lawsuit, making it a public record. Simultaneously, copies went to the SEC's Division of Enforcement and the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Within 72 hours, both federal agencies had opened formal investigations. Sandra handed me her tablet showing a breaking news alert: federal probe, NYC medical clinic owner accused of $340,000 embezzlement. "The media found it fast," Sandra observed. "Good," I replied. "Let everyone see exactly what he is." Morrison called. "Federal agents are at the old headquarters right now." Across town, Wesley's world was collapsing. 2 agents walked into his office. "Mr. Wesley Chambers," one said, extending a subpoena. "We need immediate access to all financial records." They questioned him for 4 hours. He denied everything, claiming accounting errors, until he made a fatal slip. "We didn't mention any offshore accounts," one agent noted. "How did you know about them?" That same day, agents visited Catherine at her new, small apartment in Queens. When they showed her the fraudulent documents she had signed as CFO, she became hysterical. "I didn't know. I just signed what he told me to sign," she cried. "Can I make a deal? Can I testify against him?" 2 days later, Wesley tried to use an ATM, transaction denied. He called his bank. All his accounts, including the offshore one in the Caymans, had been frozen by federal order. He had nothing. Catherine faced the same financial paralysis. Their credit cards were maxed out. They couldn't pay their rent. Their civil attorney contacted Morrison, desperate for a settlement. "My clients will withdraw all litigation," he offered. "They'll surrender any future claims to the inheritance." I rejected it immediately. "No deal." "Mrs. Vance," their attorney pleaded, "my clients are facing significant prison time. Surely, you can show some mercy." "I had mercy when I was lying between the subway rails," I said, my voice flat. Wesley's voice suddenly came over the speakerphone. "Eleonora, please. I made mistakes, but prison? For accounting errors?" "Accounting errors?" I repeated. "You stole over $340,000. You tried to kill me. Call it what it is." Catherine was crying audibly now. Mom, I'm so sorry, please help me." "You stood on that platform," I said, my voice cold as ice. "You smiled. No settlement. No mercy. We're done here." I disconnected the call. The legal battles concluded swiftly after that. In early August, the judge in our civil case dismissed all of their claims, with prejudice, and ordered them to reimburse me $125,000 in legal fees. 3 days later, Wesley was forced to resign by the old company's board. Catherine resigned via email. With no leadership and no contracts, Vance Healthcare Group, the shell company I had left them, filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. It collapsed under the weight of its own corruption, exactly as I had planned. I sold the Upper East Side townhouse in 3 weeks. I sent a representative to oversee the move. Neighbors watched as Wesley and Catherine loaded their few belongings into a rented truck. They moved to a 3rd-floor walk-up in Queens, with windows facing a brick wall. From privilege to poverty in 6 months. In late August, Morrison texted me, "Wesley's plea hearing is tomorrow." The U.S. Attorney's Office had invited me to provide a victim impact statement at his sentencing. I replied, "I'll be there." That evening, I sat at my laptop and began to write. At the federal courthouse, Wesley looked like a different man, gaunt, aged, and broken. Catherine sat in the back row, alone. "How do you plead to the charge of wire fraud?" the judge asked. "Guilty, Your Honor," Wesley whispered. When the judge asked if the victim wished to make a statement, I stood. I walked to the podium and set my papers down, but I didn't read from them. I had memorized every word. "Your Honor, on March 12, Wesley Chambers pushed me onto the subway tracks because I had discovered his theft and refused to surrender my company. I survived by lying between the rails as the train passed over my body." My voice was steady, clinical. The physical trauma lasted weeks. The betrayal is permanent. He didn't just steal money, he stole from patients and employees. Then he sued me, claiming I was mentally incompetent, to finish what the train could not. I met the judge's eyes. I asked the court for the maximum sentence. The judge sentenced Wesley to 18 months in federal prison and full restitution. A week later, Catherine had her hearing. Because she had cooperated fully and testified against her husband, she received 3 years probation and community service. No prison, but a permanent criminal record. She was now working retail at a shopping center in Queens. 3 days after the sentencing, I was in my new corner office. Vance Medical Solutions was thriving. Sandra Chen was now a full partner. My phone rang. The caller ID read, Catherine. I hesitated, then answered, saying nothing. Mom? Mom, please don't hang up. Her voice was broken, desperate. Wesley's in prison. I'm on probation. We lost everything. I'm working minimum wage. I can't pay my rent next month. I have nobody. She was sobbing. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you. I'm your daughter. The silence stretched. Finally, I spoke. You stood on that platform. You watched him push me. And you smiled. I was scared, she cried. He manipulated me. You are an adult, Catherine. You made your choices. Now you must live with them. So that's it? You're just abandoning me? You abandoned me, I said, when you chose him. I hung up the phone and blocked her number. Sandra entered a moment later with acquisition proposals, and we got back to work. The company I rebuilt was stronger than it had ever been. That evening, I stood at the window, watching the Manhattan lights flicker on. My reflection showed an older woman, alone, but not lonely. Somewhere out there, my daughter was struggling with poverty and regret. My former son-in-law was in a prison cell. I felt no joy in their suffering, but I felt no guilt either. They had tried to take my life and my company. Now, they had nothing, and I had rebuilt, stronger than before. I turned off the lights and left the office. The past was finished. Justice had been served.